Coming up next on Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, our 100th episode. AMD's Brazos and Fusion. Ryan loves 3D HD TV, recording LPs, and some budget upgrade advice. Oh, yes, and a motherboard giveaway. Free motherboards, people. Coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 100, recorded December 23rd, 2010. Motherboard giveaway.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Ford and voice-activated sync, featuring true hands-free calling, turn-by-turn directions, 911 assist, and more. Available exclusively on Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles. And by MailRoute. Businesses of every size use MailRoute. One user, 50,000 users, it doesn't matter. MailRoute will protect you from spam and viruses, simplify your life, and make your email usable again. Visit mailroute.info for more details.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton, joined as always for all the weekly news and the latest in hardware updates, upgrades, and hands-on questions with the benchmarking legend, Mr. Ryan Shrout.
Thank you. It's an interesting kind of week here for technology news. I don't know.
It's a very slow week.
Yeah. Very slow. We got the holidays and stuff. This is recorded on Thursday, so tomorrow being Christmas Eve. But I kind of expected there to be a little bit more since we are so close to CES, but there wasn't anything really huge.
Well, okay. First of all, we should point out for anybody that's going to be at CES, Ryan and I will be there on the show floor. So if you see us, feel free to say hi. If I'm taping, please wait till the light goes off or I step away from the camera. We're actually going to be having a meetup for Techzilla on Thursday night, and I'll put all the information on there on the internet. If you are still at CES and can actually walk by 10 o'clock on Thursday. But I think this year, a lot of people are underplaying the pre-announcements because there's usually Ryan's right. There's usually like 42 million emails like, come visit our booth at CES. We're going to have and it's like cell phone covers or it's battery technology or it's battery, you know what I mean? Like there's always pre-announcements because people they give you a bunch of the news, maybe under NDA so that you'll know it's coming so that you're sure to make them one of your, 45 or 100 appointments at CES.
There's a lot of that going on still. But
yeah, maybe a little lower than last year. A lot of big announcements coming up, and a lot of announcements got pulled back because Google apparently went to LG and Samsung and several other players and said, we'd like you to hold off on releasing the Google TV. We're not going to do a big announcement at CES.
Oh, really?
That actually was New York Times was reporting that earlier in the week. We were talking about it on Techzilla, Robert Heron and I, or Veronica and I. We taped 6 shows in the last 7 days to get ahead of the Christmas
schedule. For those
holidays. Oh my goodness! But the interesting thing is that Google still hasn't put the beta label in the corner of the Google TV, but they've basically said we got to do some work here. It's too complicated. We're going to do some redesign work, and asked some pretty big television companies to hold off, and that's despite the fact that Sony and Logitech already have boxes in the field. So that one is going to be interesting to watch. Yeah, there's rumors of Microsoft, I guess, there's going to be like 42,000 Android tablets. There's going to be probably some small announcements, it sounds like, from AMD and NVIDIA. Obviously, everybody who listens to this podcast regularly, and for everyone who's found us after our award from iTunes, our 2010 Best of Award, you should know that Sandy Bridge is coming, and I hope you didn't buy a notebook this week because it'll be cheaper in a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Damn it, I did buy a notebook last week.
Which one did you get?
I actually replaced my X200 with an X201 refurb unit, so it was like $650 or something like that. So it was a good price anyway. But I did that in preparation, knowing that the Sandy Bridge ones were going to be announced at CES. I was going to want them. They weren't going to be available till March or April, maybe a little bit later, and be more expensive. So this way, I preempted myself from spending that money next quarter.
Perfect. Well, and when you buy the Sandy Bridge notebook in March, I'll buy the X201 from you.
Fair enough.
How's that?
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, there will be major announcements. Samsung will have announcements. LG will have announcements. Microsoft will certainly be saying something somewhere, probably involving how their, cell phone operating system isn't a failure. And I think it's a really, really interesting operating system. It has a lot of potential. A lot of Android devices are expected. We'll see. We'll know more about the PC situation.
On the tablet front, I'm worried. I'm worried that you said there are going to be lots of tablets announced and all that kind of stuff, and I think that's 100% correct. I think it's a drawback because I feel like there are going to be good tablets, and I think it will be much more difficult than it should be to find the good ones because of the 75 that will be announced, and every booth you go to will have an Android-based tablet.
I don't know. I want to remind everybody, and especially you, because I sense some pre-CES mayhem going in your head, is that 7,000 Android tablets will be announced at CES. 5,000 of them will ship.
True.
2,000 of them will ship for more than like 3 days, and then of course you've got 1,000 left to sort out, but that'll be relatively easy by the time it's. I mean, think about it, right? Boxy supposed to ship like second quarter, shipped Q4. Popbox shipped late, and a lot of the stuff. It's the big announcement. Samsung 8,000 and 9,000 shipped late in this year. Speaking of which,
go ahead.
I was actually, go ahead. It's okay. I was going
to say that it seems like most of the stuff that was really exciting at last year's CES, I feel like they're going to show that stuff again at CES this year, but hey, it's released. Like the Boxy Box was one of those things where I originally thought of as last year at CES, that was a big discussion point. Everybody was talking about how cool it was, and they're just now starting to be released as of a few weeks ago, and I feel like they're going to be shown again as the same type of form factor and that kind of thing. And I think there's a couple of examples of that, but
I think I'm on my 11th or 13th CES at this point. They all kind of blur together, but one thing I've noticed is there's a lot of incremental years, and then there's some big evolutionary years being these, years being the measure of time, but
sure.
There's some years where it's there's huge leaps, and you look at something and it's oh my goodness, I never envisioned anything like that. And then there's other years where it's okay, they put another button on the cell phone. Okay, they move the cell phones onto, and that's just the nature of the beast. And what's kind of fun though is every couple of years somebody comes out of nowhere with something absolutely amazing that absolutely just grabs everybody, and just gets everybody really, really super excited. So that's what I'm hoping for. Tuesday night, Wednesday, when they start doing the big briefings, you generally don't run into those announcements you couldn't have imagined, but by the time the show floor opens on Wednesday, Thursday, it should be interesting. So we've got AMD's been making some announcements on the Brazos platform. Do you want to talk about that, or you want to talk about your new lust for the VT25?
Let's talk. Let me mention the Fusion news here first. This is the only thing that's kind of been newsworthy in my view. That's specifically hardware related. That's come out over the last little bit. And this is kind of little bits and pieces of leaking information about the first products that are going to be announced and shown at CES or beyond for the AMD Fusion line. We've talked about the Fusion Performance, the Ontario Zacate processors, APUs, the combined CPU GPU parts, and the platform is called Brazos. It's a combination of the chipset and the processor. There was an announcement that showed that there were promises or declarations from ASUS, Gigabyte, MSI, and Sapphire that they were going to be offering motherboards based on the Brazos platform with the integrated C series, which is the Ontario, and E series, which is the higher wattage, higher performance Zacate parts. Very soon, probably in January. So that's good news for consumers that want to build their own home theater PC or build their own small form factor box based out of these. We had a picture in our story at PC Perspective of a Gigabyte board, a mini ITX platform, where you still have a full-size PCI Express by 16 slot, 2 DIMM slots. It looks like a typical motherboard, very, very low power consumption, but still pretty good performance as well. The other big thing was actually there was a leak of the Acer Aspire 1 522 notebook or netbook, depending on what you want to call it. So this is based on the same AMD Brazos platform, 10-inch screen, or no, this is here we go, 13-inch screen. No, I lied again. 10-inch screen, Windows 7, 2 gigs of memory, AMD C-Series 1 gigahertz processor. Obviously, it's got the integrated graphics from that, with the price starting at about $425 based on the conversion rates that they're doing from apparently Thailand, which is where this information first leaked out. They're quoting battery life at only 6 hours for a 6-cell battery, which is lower than I thought we were going to see out of these platforms. I'm curious to see how well that will actually hold up, if that is correct. But we're talking about a 10-inch, netbook style machine, $400 or so, Windows 7, good specs, decent battery life. I'd say 6 hours is pretty good for that size of machine. Would you agree, or do you think are people expecting more than that now?
People always want more. I don't think it's a realistic expectation. I think it's in the neighborhood.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see more about this machine. I'm sure we'll see several others. MSI, I know. Asus will probably have some EPCs based on this platform as well. And I will be very curious to see how well AMD kind of picks up the slack here. This will be their first real major product launch in quite some time.
Should be fun. AMD's, wow. Sorry, I just tried to unsmirch the news stories that we just did.
No, that's all right. But actually, let's real quick take a break. Thank the first of our sponsors for This Week in Computer Hardware. That would be Ford and the voice-activated sync. It's a problem for a lot of us these days. We're driving. We want to do a lot of things like send text messages, listen to text messages, or rather read text messages, take phone calls, that type of thing. It's not safe. It's illegal in a lot of places now, maybe in California, or definitely in California, to hold a phone up to your ear. It's I think it's also the case here where I live in Kentucky. And these are all things that Ford's and their Ford Sync system can help you out with. It has true hands-free calling, turn-by-turn directions, 911 assist, and more. Sync is available exclusively on Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles. It's a truly kind of, it was co-developed by Microsoft. It listens to your voice, so you can make calls on most Bluetooth-enabled mobile phones, get turn-by-turn directions, real-time traffic alerts, weather updates and alerts. And if you're ever in an accident, and the airbags deploy, Sync will automatically call 911 through your own phone. So that's pretty helpful to know. You can also do music and podcast searching on most MP3 media players, personalized traffic alerts if it knows your route, sends you better traffic updates. If it knows the way you usually go to work is going to have some problems. Sync will even reroute you with turn-by-turn directions if that occurs. As I mentioned, audible text messages. You get a text message, it will read it to you in a quite pleasant voice, I'm sure. Up to you to respond to it carefully, safely, all that good stuff. Sync helps you keep your eyes on the road and hands on the wheel. It's standard in some Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury models, optional in others, so be sure to check it out. And don't forget, there is still the contest. We have until, I think, December 31st. You can win a trip to Madrid for you and a friend to test drive the all-new Ford Focus coming out in early 2011. And not only do you get this awesome trip and a chance to test drive the car, Ford will make a donation of $10,000 to a charitable cause of your choice. To enter to win, submit a video now through December 31st saying what charitable cause you would support and why. If you're selected, Ford will donate $10,000 to that cause and then send you and a friend on the trip to Madrid. Actually, you get to test drive at the National Institute for Aerospace Technology. To learn more and submit a video entry, go to twitfordfocus.com. Make sure you make a video with what charitable cause you'd like to support and a short video up to 2 minutes in length. Upload it now through December 31st. And again, that URL is twitfordfocus.com. And we thank them for their support of our wonderful, always informative podcast.
Such enthusiasm.
I know,
So
I know.
You got eyes on the Viera VT25, Panasonic's top-of-the-line plasma, 3D plasma television. You like?
Yeah. During all these TV sales were going on, NVIDIA and AMD and even Intel now are really pushing 3D technology. on us, hey, look, our technology can do 3D Blu-ray, we can do 3D gaming on TVs as well as 3D vision monitors and that type of stuff. So I was like, okay, finally, we'll buy a 3D TV, we'll put it in the office, we can use it to watch TV, do testing, play games on, do all that kind of stuff. And I ended up picking up the Viera. It was either the VT25 or GT25. I don't know. There's a lot of model numbers, and they differ by like HDMI port type of thing. But hooked it up to a 3D Blu-ray player, got the package that included the Avatar 3D movie, a couple sets of the active shutter glasses, and hooked it up last night just to make sure it all functioned correctly. And I've got to say, I was really impressed. It's the first time I'd ever used or spent some time with the Viera Plasma. It was a great picture in 2D and did really good in 3D. My wife came in and to meet us for dinner, and she saw us wearing these nerdy glasses, and she kind of laughed at us. And then I said, "Well, here, try it out. Let me know what you think." And she was really impressed. She was, her line was, "Wow, this looks a lot better than I expected it to. It's pretty cool." And we watched for maybe 30, 40 minutes in total before leaving for dinner, and rewound and fast forwarded to some action parts and stuff. And I liked it a lot. I know a lot of people are not real high on 3D technology catching on and all that kind of stuff, and there are a lot of caveats: the cost of the glasses and the extra cost of the TV and that kind of stuff. Right. But now actually having hands-on them with it, I would put it at theater quality or above for 3D technology.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's also there's what people say in polls, there's what happens in the market, and then there's kind of where we are in the consumer adoption curve. And for 3D, we're still really kind of in the early adopter phase of 3D. I think it's almost all of the television sold in 2011. By the end of 2011, it's going to be hard to find a non-3D HD TV. And the reality is it doesn't make a difference. It's not really going to add any expense in the none too distant future to the cost of your television. Right. And all the television makers, unless 3D flames out in a pretty serious way in the next 6 months or a year, 3D is just going to be a checkbox feature on new HD TVs. The 3D experience varies vastly depending on the content. What you looked at, Avatar, is probably the best example. You had a director who's enthusiastic about technology, had been thinking about this story and how to employ 3D, and had the money and the time to develop the technology, shoot it the way he wanted to. The worst case scenario is when one of the studios has gone, "Hey, we've got a movie and it sucked, so we'll run it through a cheap 3D processing." And like
Piranha, maybe.
Yeah, well, or there's a couple other ones that come to mind, Runners, or whatever that was. Because it's unfortunate, because it takes, if you don't shoot it in 3D, the most informed people I've talked to who are from the sort of LA Hollywood part of the world basically say you're talking about a minimum of a year to properly convert a feature movie into a 3D format, and that's a lot of time. You also saw it in with one of the best televisions available, Panasonic. If it's the VT25, it is probably the best plasma out there right now, and certainly the best 3D plasma out there. Then maybe it wasn't the VT25, but it's also, Panasonic's pretty much still kicking ass on the plasmas. Samsung's 8000, if anybody is shopping last minute, is a fantastic, their 8000 series is a fantastic LED LCD. But yeah, 3Ds, it's worth checking out if you see the display in Costco or the big box store, wherever you shop. Plug your eyes up against it. I think the kids are still going to be more into it than the adults, but if you find the right thing, and a lot of people I've talked to, Ben over from Engadget HD, for example, he just hated everything about 3D until he saw college football games in 3D, and he was absolutely stunned and amazed and shocked, and wants all sports in 3D now.
I ordered in that exact vein. I ordered the there's a FIFA World Cup DVD or Blu-ray that's in 3D, and I didn't have I know they were broadcasting the World Cup in 3D, right? And I didn't have it at the time. And here's a DVD, so I'll be able to see some of that sports action. That I agree. A lot of people that have seen it say that here's your killer application for that. Also, if you're interested, check out, I know Amazon is doing the deals. I think Best Buy's doing them too, like through Panasonic with the Viera. You get the Blu-ray player and the Avatar kit, which is 2 glasses in the movie, for free when you buy one of the TVs. And I think I paid $13.99 for the TV.
Wow.
So I think I got they got really cheap really quick. So
probably wanting to clear out the warehouses before the holiday.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you don't have DirecTV, do you?
I do not. I know. I don't have any 3D source through cable or anything like that. So,
well, if you know anybody with DirecTV that has a compatible DVR, drag your plasma and your glasses to their house, because they're going to be doing the Prince's Trust rock concert on Christmas Eve in 3D. So,
okay, all right. I will
just letting you know.
Thank you. How about we jump into some emails?
Sure. Gerald writes in, what program should I use to record vinyl to my laptop for the best sound? Price is no object. It's dangerous words in the world of audio, Gerald, number one. And number two, this is actually a hardware question, not a software question, because converting your vinyl LP records into digital audio files, MP3s, FLACs, whatever they are, is about garbage in, garbage out. And this is my polite way of saying is if you do a crappy job getting the audio into your computer, restoration software is just going to make a bad file sound worse. Matter of fact, for all audio restoration software, you should apply it as minimally and as sparingly as possible, because it tends to do more harm to the audio quality than good. You need a decent turntable and a decent cartridge. Audiophiles will spend thousands of dollars on cartridges or hundreds of dollars. For under $100, you can get a pretty badass cartridge, which is the little needle and the little thing that plugs into the end of your tone arm on your album. Grado makes some pretty good ones. Grado Green, Grado Black. You can buy them online pretty cheap. I'm not a big fan of the Ion USB record players. Some people have had good luck with them. I don't like the
That's
digital.
The one that, like ThinkGeek sells.
Yeah, I admittedly I haven't tested one in a couple of years, but last time I got hands-on with one, I didn't think the analog to digital conversion was very good. I didn't think their preamp was very good. If you have a turntable that does not have what they call sort of an RIAA profile preamp inside of it, basically if your turntable has a line out, then it has a phono preamp built in. If it doesn't have something that says line out, then you need to get a phono preamp, which basically they do some really interesting equalizing to the signal before they cut it onto the vinyl so that basically the audio fits. I could get really nerdy about the history of all of the different types of EQs, and older record players would have like 6 or 7 different, because every major label had their own sort of formula for the best way to do this. Then the RIAA standardized these into a single format that became pretty standard. But you need a proper phono preamp to apply that. And then once you've done that, you can record it. Oh, yes, you need an analog to digital converter. We've talked a bunch about those in the past. And finally, once you've recorded that onto your machine, then you can start using software. There are a lot of different pieces of software. There's a lot of dedicated software items. Most of the ones that are like LP2 CD Converter Pro Max Super Restoration Plus. The ones I've looked at tend to have been built on DOS applications and poorly updated ever since then. I highly recommend a program from Bias called SoundSoap. I think it's kind of the standard. Some people, I don't think Sony's Oxford restoration tools are still out. But yeah, Bias SoundSoap. You can buy the Pro version if you want to. It'll work with Pro Tools if you want to. It'll work with several other applications. It works in a basic standalone. And it starts pretty cheap. SoundSoap 2 is the one that's out now. I highly recommend SoundSoap or SoundSoap SE if you're restoring basically albums like pops, clicks, hisses, or if you're dealing with like the noise, the hiss on a tape recording. If you have an old cassette tape you're trying to convert to digital audio. But definitely don't cheap out on your cartridge, your turntable, and the analog to digital converter. You have to kind of have to work to get a really sucky one these days, but it's kind of fun. So I think I answered that question to death, dude.
No, it's good. It's good.
Because it sounds like a soft.
The only answer I was going to have was that Ion system. It's like, well, I saw one of those in a magazine once, but yeah, I don't have any hands-on with it. So,
well, I could also say, spend time cleaning your albums, and getting the little anti-stat gun for your album. I mean, if cost is really no object, send your albums to somebody else and have them recorded. There's a whole bunch of services. You can find them if you Google where you can send your albums to them and they will basically digitize them and remove the clocks and hisses and clocks and hisses, clicks and hisses. I also got to say, unless you're a pretty serious audiophile, I would just buy the CD if it's available. Please don't throw sticks and bricks at me, but for most people, they don't have a particularly well-preserved vinyl collection unless you're like, okay, I've got all of these, 78s and 45s and stuff that'll never be released by anybody. In that case, okay, yeah, start recording it, but, spend some quality time. If you can hear the difference between the LP and the CD, then by all means, consider digitizing albums that are available on CD. But you might want to start looking for sort of like 96K and higher end recording options for that, so that you get as much of the music as possible in your digital file.
Nice. We got an email from Dan about an upgrade dilemma. He says, love the show, listens to it religiously every week. My question is about some unique upgrades, or some simple upgrades, I'm sorry. Looking to upgrade my video card to something that has a little more power. I want to keep the price tag right around 150 to 180, if at all possible. I would love to avoid upgrading my processor as well, but if a whole new system is the answer, tell it to me straight. This current setup is an Athlon 64 X2 5400 Plus that runs at 2.8 gigahertz, an XFX 8600 card, 4 gigs memory, Windows 7, Home 64. Any help would be great on this matter. My motherboard has one of the newer PCI Express slots, so we know he can handle all that stuff. So I guess his question here is, if he wants to upgrade his graphics cards from an 8600, will he have to upgrade his processor as well? Now, the Athlon 64 X2 is a fairly old processor. No doubt that there have been vast improvements in CPU processing technology since then. However, that being said, depending on the games you're playing, if I assume you're playing the current Call of Duty Black Ops style of games and you're not playing World of Warcraft or Civ 5, because if you look at a game like Civ 5, it's almost as CPU dependent as it is GPU dependent, maybe a little bit more so. But if you look at Call of Duty Black Ops, yes, they can take advantage of more CPU power. They're still dominated by GPU performance. So I think, in the 150 to 180 range, you are in the perfect spot for a GTX 460 1 gigabyte graphics card. You can get one of those for like the 180 range right now, non-overclocked maybe, but still a pretty fast card. You're definitely going to see an improvement over a GeForce 8600 GTS graphics card. And, if you're going to have to buy a whole new system or upgrade your processor after the fact, I know I say this all the time. I probably sound like one of those broken vinyls that Patrick was referring to. But if you're going to buy it anyway, if you're going to buy this new graphics card anyway, go ahead and buy it now and try it in your system and see if you see enough of an improvement that you can push off that CPU upgrade for a little bit longer. And then if you buy it and you can't, then you still have that new component and you could upgrade your motherboard and processor, next month or next week or whenever it is you want to do that. So that I think you'll still see a pretty good improvement by going to a 460 GTX 460 or maybe even a Radeon 6850, something like that, for that price range. You will see advantage if you change the processor, but the GPU is going to be the more dominant factor here still. So
there you have it.
Yep.
Rob has a question about ripping all of his CDs again. Due to a series of unfortunate events involving Lemony Snicket and a failed external USB drive and server reload, I find myself with the opportunity to rip my entire CD collection again. The last time I went through this was maybe 12 years ago, so I did a little research hoping to find the latest and greatest software and settings to get my tunes digitized. I've settled on using DB Power Amp, excellent choice. And its multi-encoder to create a FLAC file I can use as a disk archive, as well as a streaming source for the squeeze box tied into my stereo, and the lame encoder to create MP3 files for loading up portable media, iPhone, etc. My question is, do you think 190K VBB variable bitrate is good enough for the MP3s these days? Disk space isn't as big a concern as it used to be, but I don't want to go overboard on the bit rates if there isn't a benefit. What are your thoughts? Oh boy. So many things. A lot of it depends on where you're listening and how critical a listener you are. I think unless, when you say 12 years ago, I'm thinking you probably ripped everything to like 128K because that was the de facto standard. CD audio and 128K is many things, but it is nowhere near equivalent to a CD unless you are writing a very enthusiastic write-up circa 1998. When I say enthusiastic, I mean not exactly lying, but not exactly knowing what you're talking about because you listen to a lot of crappy music on an AM radio.
Indeed.
But storage is cheap. It's kind of funny. My iPhone had what I thought was a large amount of storage on it until I got like 4 different GPS navigation programs loaded on here, a couple movies for my son, and tried to do Apple lossless files, and all of a sudden it's full, and I can't update any of the major applications. So I think going with a FLAC file and something that's lower resolution is an excellent idea. 190 kbps VBR. I'm not a big fan of variable bitrate. Some people think they get a better result out of a multi-pass encoding of a VBR file. Me personally, I just go with everything to 256K. 190K, I think, is on the threshold for most people in not being able to hear a lot of audio degradation or audio, basically, like as stuff gets compressed more, cymbals stop sounding like cymbals and they start sounding like bacon. Choral vocals tends to go from a beautiful, grouping of voices working together to this sort of univoice where everything kind of sounds like this weird thing that doesn't sound like the chorus and doesn't sound like an individual person. 190K is probably a tipping point for starting to not being able to hear a difference between the audio source from a CD and the encoded file. I think by 256K, especially if you're mostly listening on inexpensive headphones or in a noisy car environment, I don't think you're going to be able to hear much of a difference at that point. So best case scenario, take your favorite album, the one that you absolutely positively love and listen to and have heard 42,000 times, encode it in FLAC, encode it at 256K, encode it at 190, listen with your headphones, listen to, in your car or wherever you want to listen to it, and see if you can hear a difference, and then encode to what feels right for you.
Look at that. Personalized results and answers. I like it.
We aim to please.
We got some more emails to get to. Before we do that, we do have to thank our second sponsor of today's show. That would be MailRoute. Businesses of every size are using MailRoute, whether or not you have 1 user or 50,000 users. It doesn't matter. MailRoute, that's going to be tough for me to say, will protect you from spam and viruses, simplify your life, and make your email usable again. MailRoute is a secure hosted service that filters virus and spam for companies of any size. It can eliminate viruses and spam, reduce load on your email server, lower your costs, and make your email usable again. This sounds like a miracle service. Typical MailRoute customers see a 95% reduction in their inbound email volume with virtually no false positives. Now, Leo loves MailRoute. Says he's been using the service for his domains for more than 6 years, and MailRoute has been his top choice for spam and virus filtering all along. Tom Merritt started using MailRoute, and now he can use email domains that he'd given up on being able to use as hopeless. I have several of those email addresses. Tom Johnson, the founder and CEO of MailRoute, started one of the very first companies in this market back in 1998, FrontBridge. It was acquired by Microsoft in 2005 and still offered as a Microsoft Exchange hosted service line. Tom wasn't done, though, had too many good ideas, and he couldn't stand to see the good away, so he started MailRoute, his next-generation service for mail filtering with a level of accuracy and a price that's unmatched. There's nothing easier for mail filtering than MailRoute. There's no hardware or software to install. You just sign up with MailRoute and then change the MX records for your domain to start your mail flowing through them. And then that does all of the work for you. Visit mailroute.info to sign up. As a Twitch listener, or in this case a Twitch listener, you'll receive a 10% discount for the life of your account. Small business accounts start at $2 per user per month for 10 users, and because of demand of the Twit army, MailRoute has added a new service for individual users as well, less than $30 per user per year for single users. Mailroute.info is the URL you need for more information. You can sign up for the email filtering service that Tom and Leo both love. So that's
if
pretty
Tom
good.
and Leo say yes, it must be good.
Yeah, it's one of those. My biggest email address that I've had since I was like 13 years old. Fortunately, it still has so many registrations. I wish I owned that domain so that I could edit its MX record and filter it all through here. Maybe one day when that company, it's gone through like 7 different holding companies.
Oh, no.
Domain. So I'm always worried that one day it's just going to stop working, but maybe I'll be able to buy it off of them real cheap someday soon.
That would be nice.
Let's see.
Yeah, spam-free mail is always a big plus. A big happy plus. Mailroute people, check it out. Oh boy, do you want to talk about upgrading from the 6870 to the HD 6950 for Steve?
Yeah,
or
we'll
Jason with his new hard drive?
Let's see. Steve had a question here. He says, "Love the show. Look forward to listening to it each week." That's good news. I'm building a computer with Sandy Bridge and bought the AMD Radeon 6870. He does graphics design work as well as gaming with plans for occasional video editing. My question is, should I return the card and get the 6950 for $50 more, or is the performance difference not worth it? Thanks again. It's one of those open-ended questions that presents so many problems to me because he says, is the performance difference worth it? And that's really dependent on the user. It's dependent on what screen resolution he's running at. We don't really get that answer. The 6870 is still going to be a really, really good graphics card. Right. If I assume he's running at 1080p resolutions, which is kind of where most enthusiast class users are at. If they're not a 30-inch, they're typically at like a 22 or 24-inch 1080p panel on their desktop. I would say you're going to see the 6950 will better perform in gaming. It won't make any difference in your graphic design work or your video editing. So if those are your primary focuses, or if design work is the primary focus, then
don't bother.
Don't bother. If gaming is going to be a primary focus of you, then the $50 investment might be worth it if it's not too much of a hassle to pay for shipping and do this return, or maybe you just walk into Fry's and do the swap, in which case, it might be worth it. And when Sandy Bridge comes out, it's going to be a higher end processor. You're going to like the performance out of it. You already know that. I mean, you're saying you're building it on it, and so you'll be able to get you'll be able to push the graphics a little bit faster with Sandy Bridge than you might with other CPUs. So it might make sense to make that change, but without knowing more specifics and games and resolutions and that kind of stuff, it's hard to say for sure. Is $50 worth performance difference? Go to different websites. You can go to PC Perspective, you can go to AnonTech, you can go to Hard OCP, and look at the reviews for the 6950 and see how it compares to 6870, and then see if $50 is worth that.
That is always the big question. And please, people, Twitch at twit.tv. Give us as many details as you can stand.
Yes.
We'll edit it down if it's too long to read on air, we promise. Jason says, you guys do a great show. Thank you, Jason. And have great support from your audience. We do. Without our audience, we could just call each other on the phone and talk about the news stories. He says, my dilemma is a common one. I need to replace a hard disk drive. In this case, it is in my wife's computer. Always a dangerous feeling. This particular machine hardly ever gets turned off, runs well, email, casual games, multiplayer, real-time strategy games from time to time. It's a Phenom 2, 4-core, 3 gigahertz, 4 gig of RAM, GeForce 9800 GT with a 250 gigabyte Western Digital SATA hard disk drive. This is a beautifully detailed email, Jason. Steve, take notes. He says, I would like to shorten the response time for apps to open when you click them. As I understand, that means a new hard disk drive. Whoops. Sorry, there's some pre-Christmas mayhem going on at my house right now. Yes. So if my phone explodes, it's because I'm making sure that my toddler hasn't lost his mind. There was a Santa incident earlier today, and we're still hearing the last of the aftershocks. So, Jason, new hard disk drive wants to shorten the response time for apps when you click them open. SSDs are way out of my budget, he says. I considered the Seagate Momentus XT250 gigabytes. I have one of those on my laptop, and it seems to make a difference. What about the Western Digital black drives? I have a similar issue with my own desktop rig and another Phenom 2, 3.6 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of RAM, with 2 Seagate 7200, 160 gigabyte drives and RAID 0, the Death Wish RAID, I agree. Mine definitely runs quicker with the RAID, but I am open to making it faster as well, though that project will have to wait till much later on when the budget allows. The Momentus XT is about $100. That's about as much as I could spend on a drive right now. So Now, the one thing we don't know is which operating system is running, and I'm going to say it's probably not Windows 7. It's probably Windows XP. One of the interesting things about Windows 7 is if you throw a giant pile of RAM at it, it starts to pre-cache everything in physical RAM, the stuff that you access the most, and that will speed up. As you use the machine, it sort of adopts to your usage profile to open things up faster. ... That said, you've got a 250 gigabyte hard drive, which I'm guessing is probably 3 years old, possibly 4 years old, and a 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte drive. A 1 terabyte drive is going to cost you probably about $60 right now. Should give you a healthy performance boost just from the increase of areal density on the disk. The black drives will run faster than the green drives. Green drives are optimized for minimal noise and minimal heat, primarily designed for servers. Let's not get into the whole whether or not they're compatible with RAID question right now. But I would say an upgrade to a 60 gigabyte, or excuse me, a 1 terabyte black drive would be a healthy improvement. And if the machine probably won't take more RAM, but you might want to think about updating to Windows 7 in the future to sort of take advantage of its ability to optimize how it accesses applications inside of the operating system. What do you think?
I think that's good. I mean, his issue is the price level, right? He says SSDs are out of his budget. And what bothers me about the question he specifically says is he would like to shorten the response time for apps to open when you click them. Right. And the first thing I thought was,
SSD.
Well, SSDs do that to an incredibly noticeable degree. Like if you upgrade to a Western Digital black drive from what you have, or a Velociraptor, something like that, but obviously you won't get that in the price range. You'll see performance improvements, no doubt. Even just ghosting that image over and running it on those new drives. But it's the difference you'll see with an SSD in terms of that specific activity, shortening the response time for applications to open. I mean, I almost hate to not say really try hard to see if you can fit an SSD in there. Now, under $100, you can get SSDs. You can get an OCZ 30 gig Vertex drive for under $100. You can get an Intel 40 gig SSD for $69.99 after rebate. Now the problem is that can't be your only hard drive, right? If you're talking about a 40 gig, or even if we can find like a 60 gig hard drive or something like that falls under that $100 price range, we can't recommend that as your only drive. So you have to either
well, we can, as long as you give up loading more than 2 applications and maybe like 3 highly compressed MP3. I mean, if you put the operating system and her primary applications on that SSD drive, she will click, things will happen, you will be a hero, but you're still going to need that 250 gigabyte drive to store all of her data on, which then gets into the, you can't save it on the C drive, honey, you got to save it on the D drive, and it does
make things more complicated.
And that's definitely the trade-off. Yeah. Man, SSDs are getting...
If he's hard set not going SSD, then I agree with the recommendation. Just go for the largest new drive you can get for under $100, and you will see performance advantages because of areal density and technology improvements and that kind of stuff. But I can't promise the life-changing results that you might get through an SSD.
And as every time I open up my MacBook, I think about how much I miss having an SSD in that.
Yes, agreed. We got an email from Alex about why you do want Windows 7 Professional. PC gaming apparently is the answer. Now that on its face.
And I went, what?
Yeah. And I did as well. But it comes into play if you like somewhat older games. For example, the game that is my crack is 1997's Total Annihilation. Now, this program is a 32-bit program and runs fine on any version of Windows. However, the installers are 16-bit applications. Windows 7 64-bit removes support for 16-bit applications, while 32-bit Windows 7 retained it. However, if you want more than 3 gigs of RAM, and you should, there's no question that you would want 64-bit. Windows 7 Professional works around this limitation by giving you a free copy of Windows XP that runs in a hypervisor. So I guess it's not really PC gaming, but legacy support. If you don't keep legacy software, then Pro offers nothing for you as a home user. But if you use a lot of old programs, then
there you have it.
There you go. I mean, it's nothing. He explained it well. I did not know that. I guess the 64-bit of Windows 7 took away all support for 16-bit applications, but Windows 32-bit still has it. So that kind of makes sense why, like I was kind of, this X201 that I ordered has Windows 7, but it comes with a 32-bit version of it. And I was kind of like, I wonder why they do that. Why would anybody put 32-bit on anything still? And I guess that's a reason if you're, a lot of enterprise applications might still be running, unfortunately, on those old style applications. So,
yeah.
And also you get into games.
The games thing, I mean, it's kind of funny because that's a big legacy. Applications are a huge thing. If a company spent 10 years and several $1 million doing their inventory application of wonder, they generally never want to upgrade that application to 32-bit or 64-bit. So yeah, you got me, Alex. For anybody out there doing legacy gaming and doesn't want to do it on a secondary DOS machine, consider spending the extra cash for the professional version of Windows 7. Yep. Cole has a question about AMD CPUs and NVIDIA GPUs. He says, I used to be up to date on all the latest hardware, but thanks to 2 young children, I'm behind the curve these days. Oh, you're just ahead on a different curve, Cole. He says, I looked at the hardware leaderboard on PCPer.com, which I'd like to say is now at PCPer.com/leaderboard. Thank you, Ryan. He says, I want something similar to the high-end system. I have 3 24-inch Samsung monitors that I want to reuse along with my peripherals, but everything else will be from scratch. My dilemma is that I want an AMD system with NVIDIA cards. I want to be able to dual boot with Windows 7 64-bit and Ubuntu. Can you suggest a good motherboard to use? Specific brands and models would be greatly appreciated. Does such a creature exist? I'd rather not use Intel, but I fear Radeon cards from back in the old days with their poor Linux driver support. For reference, I want to do high-end gaming along with my software for engineering consulting. Thanks to the great podcast. I really love PCPer and Texilla also. Thank you, Cole.
This is an interesting question because in the past couple of years, we have slowly seen in support. Well, he mentions NVIDIA graphics cards is in plural, so I assume he's talking about SLI. If it's a single NVIDIA card, you can use any AMD system motherboard, any AMD-based platform, and it's not going to be a problem because you're just using one graphic card. That's not an issue. The issue is if he's actually talking about SLI support on AMD platforms, that gets a lot more complicated because I'm looking through them here. Those in the last couple of years have really kind of fallen by the wayside. I'm doing a quick search here. I want to say there's only like 2 or 3 motherboards left that do that. Okay, there's 2. ASUS has one called the M4N98TD, and that is based on the Enforce 980A SLI chipset. So it does support all the latest AMD processors, and also the same chipset powers the MSI NF980-G65. Both of those are AM3 processor sockets, so they can support the high-end 6-core processors or quad-core processors or whatever. And obviously, using NVIDIA chipsets, they will support SLI. If it's not using an NVIDIA chipset, because NVIDIA is still charging people licensing fees and all that kind of garbage for multi-GPU SLI support, those are only boards you can do that on the AMD platform. But there are at least 2 options out there for him.
There you have it. Whoops.
Yeah. So check those 2 out. I mean, and they're reasonably priced. The ASUS board is $139, and the MSI board is $139 after a rebate. So they're not super cheap, but they're pretty reasonable, I think, considering how expensive motherboards have gotten on the Intel side a lot recently.
Yeah, the last motherboard I bought for my Core i7 was $300 and change, and it had dropped down to that. Well, after taxes, it was over $300, and I didn't buy it until after it had dropped in price. So, yeah, it's one thing I'm looking for. It's kind of nice to see some of the new motherboards that are coming out that are somewhat less expensive. So we got one last email from Jackson, who's got a question about a MacBook Air competitor. He says, hey guys, I heard you talking about the MacBook Air, and I know of one laptop that is very close in thickness and battery life. It even has an optical drive and claims 8 hours of battery life and is made of magnesium, which means it will burn with an awesome glow like an old Volkswagen Beetle. Well, the crankcase, the block. Have you checked out Toshiba's R705? Jackson says this may well be my next laptop. It can be configured with an express card slot, something I need, costs less than the Air, has more memory. It can be configured with a Core i5 and a solid-state drive, though I would add an aftermarket one. Just wanted to throw out another suggestion. And then I coughed. What's kind of funny is that when you try to load that link...
is it not coming up anymore?
Yeah, it tells you it doesn't exist.
Awesome. Earlier, I swear it did. Otherwise, I would not have included the email in the search. Let's see. It was a 13.3-inch screen. Looks like still not loading. The wonders of the internet. Sorry, an error has occurred.
At least Skype's running, dude.
Yeah, no kidding. It was a Core i3 processor, 500 gig hard drive, 4 gigs of memory. It had pretty good specs compared to the MacBook Air. It doesn't have the look as being a sexy machine like the MacBook Air still does, but it looked nice. It was somewhat thin, not quite as thin. Good screen, good looking keyboard, all that kind of stuff. And performance wise, it looked like it had a little bit of an edge over what the MacBook Air had. And it was available for $749, I guess was the price on it. I mean, we've gotten lots of emails with kind of like these competitors to the MacBook Air, and there's a lot of them out there, but there's just something, and I'm a PC guy, guys. I want everybody to know this, but there's just something about the MacBook stuff that people want it more, right? I've never like debated buying a laptop for like more than a day, right? It's like, now I'll move on. But the MacBook Air, I keep coming back to and going, I can't find a use for it. Nope. And then 2 days later, I'll go back to Best Buy and I'll look at it again. I could take this back, and I'll order it online for 4 gigs of memory, and then convince myself I don't need it. And there's something about it that just is a little bit different. Now, there are competitors out there, and this Protege is one of them, and there are others from. I think somebody also had an email this week about the Dell Adamo, which he says is a good competitor to the MacBook Air. It's thinner, has more power, but he also mentioned in the email that they're not making it anymore. So I don't know if I consider that a competitor.
Yeah, well, the Adamo, if you didn't see, first of all, it was expensive. Adamo is kind of their high end. I'll call it boutique line for lack of a better description, but AdamoByDell.com, and they've got, I don't think that they've got one out, but they basically had one that was this absolutely amazing folding design where as you opened the lid, the sort of body of the keyboard kind of came down, and the bottom, sort of like 2/3 of the lid became the screen, and the bottom third became a sort of elevation for the keyboard, and the keyboard came down. It was really slick. It was a really nice piece of engineering. It felt good. It did not feel as solid as the MacBook Air. Toshiba, they generally do yeoman work. They've been a classic notebook for a really long. They've been like kind of like the classic notebook vendor for a long time. For a long time, a lot of corporate decisions were, do I buy a ThinkPad or do I buy something from Toshiba? I don't think the Protege. I hesitate. I don't think the Protege is nearly as thin. The 705 is nearly as thin as the MacBook Air. No. I think it's almost like 3/4 of an inch thick. Haha. For anybody who remembers carrying around 11-pound notebooks when that was considered like cool. But yeah, I mean, look, it's. There's ultralight notebooks all over the place, even the heavy duty, even when you look at some of the sort of stock stuff from Lenovo and Dell and HP, even the heavy notebooks these days are barely pushing 6 pounds. So to each their own. Hey, you know what? If you can get it, if it's, Best Buy had the exclusive on the R705 this summer. I'm pretty sure if they haven't killed it off completely, it's available in other places. Go for it, dude. Yep. Just, enjoy.
So we're going to wrap up our show for this holiday episode, I guess.
What can I say? We both think the MacBook Air is a really nice piece of engineering. It really is. It is. It's a hot rod. And we want to thank everybody for listening. This is 100 episodes, man. I'm not quite sure when I jumped on this particular ship, but wow, 100. That's a really cool number.
And I feel bad because we didn't plan anything special. I tell you what, let me see.
We will give away a bag of swag from CES.
I've got two Asus supercomputer brand motherboards, 1156 processor socket. One of them has like 7 PCI Express slots, brand new. We use them for some testing, but they've still got all the accessories and all that kind of stuff. And I was doing some office cleaning, so this will help both of us, I think. Send an email, twich@twit.tv. Make sure you use the word contest in the subject, and tell us what technology gadget you are most looking forward to getting or buying for somebody else, or buying for yourself after you get all the money at Christmas time. And I'll pick a couple of random winners there and send you guys out some motherboards to celebrate our 100th episode.
Am I barred from this contest? That's like a $400 motherboard, dude.
Yeah, I know. I just kind of looked that up, didn't I? What I meant to say is, if you send an email, I'll give you a half-price discount on this motherboard. No, we'll still give them away. Let's see.
Good man, Ryan Shrout.
Let's see. It's not the P6 T6. P7 something maybe. I don't know. I'll look it up later. If you're still in the chat room or whatever, I'll tell you exactly what the models are in there. But regardless, I think they're 1156. So Lenfield processor socket. So you know what we're targeting here. Twich@twit.tv. Email address is send us emails with questions, and if you put subject line contest, it'll be filtered into that link, into that list there, and we'll give away a couple motherboards. Happy 100 episodes, everybody.
Happy 100 episodes. Yeah, thank you all. PCPer.com, is that still the website, sir?
I hope so, yes. PCPer.com.
You can find me at techzilla.com, TEKZILLA. If you've never built a PC, one of our producers, Serafina, built her first PC. She's had notebooks her whole life and decided that since she no longer carries a notebook, because she does everything on her Android phone, she decided to build her first PC. So keep an eye out for that if you're looking for some tips on building your first PC. And anything big coming up between now and the new year up on PCPer.com? Between now and the new year, we'll have at least 2 or 3 different reviews up. No big launches until after the new year, right around CES. Make sure, you're going to hit up all these websites during CES, but we'll have lots and lots and lots of product launches, like January 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all that kind of stuff. It will be slamming, so to speak. To use whatever the young kids say these days. Well, for the young kids out there, feel free to email us what we should have said, twich@twit.tv. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week.